guys, welcome back to another YouTube video. As you can see, it's like snowing here at the moment. Today's going to be a different video. I was going to be recording episode 4 of the mini cut series. There's 3 episodes already up, so if you want to go check them, all you have to do is check the link in the description. But I say today was meant to be episode 4. There's been a change of plans, other things have come up, but what I'm going to do for you is I'm going to do a video on how to grow muscle tissue and the 3 mechanisms on how to grow muscle tissue in this video. Then the next episode, episode 4 of the mini cut, will be up on the next video. So I do apologize for that. It's going to be a little bit different. It's absolutely snowing here, it's freezing cold, so let's get inside and let's talk about the mechanisms of muscle growth. Cold out there. So like I said, today's video we're going to be talking about the mechanism of muscle growth. So first of all, let's identify the 3 mechanisms of muscle growth, which are mechanical stress, metabolic stress, and muscle swelling. So muscle swelling and metabolic stress are actually kind of related with each other. However, at the same time, they can be divided into their own little groups. So we're going to get into that a little bit more detail in a minute. But first of all, let's focus on mechanical stress. So mechanical stress is all from the load. It's progressive load, putting a massive amount of weight onto the given muscle target that you're trying to hit. So there's no way that we're actually going to cause mechanical stress unless we put more than 75% or higher of our 1 RM onto that exercise. So mind to muscle connection actually plays a big part in this at the same time. However, if you just have 20 key either side on a bench, that's 60 key in total. You may have amazing mind to muscle connection through those repetitions, but at the end of the day, 60 key is 60 key. If that is not 75% of your 1 RM or higher, you're not going to cause or generate mechanical stress. Rep range would be anywhere from like 4 to 8 repetitions. So mechanical stress would be something more strongmen look for, or if you're trying to do strength training, powerlifting, anything like that, they will be using and focusing more on mechanical stress than hypertrophy and metabolic stress as a bodybuilder would. So they do play a big part, mechanical stress, in bodybuilders. If you look at people like Arnold, Franco Columbu, Johnny Jackson, Dallas McCarver, you know, there's a few more bodybuilders out there who did powerlifting at the same time as doing hypertrophy work, because that's what gave them that true gritty, you know, muscle thickness onto their frame. Even people like Jordan Peters, Luke Sando, James Honested, all these athletes out there, they're incredibly strong. They would say they're bodybuilders who work more in that hypertrophy, trying to cause that metabolic stress rep range, but at the same time they are still causing mechanical stress because they're putting so much load on their, you know, their top working sets and going for that lower rep range of 4 to 8 repetitions, just really trying to get that progressive overload. Because at the end of the day, all these 3 mechanisms lead to muscle growth. So they are going to be all beneficial towards our goals, especially if we're bodybuilders. But mechanical stress is more focusing on powerlifters, strongmen, and, you know, strength training. So like I say, the rep range we want to keep anywhere from 4 to 8 repetitions. And the other thing that we need to focus on when it comes to mechanical stress is rest period. I've seen people that are trying to, you know, go in and do powerlifting or strength training, and they're bringing their rest periods from 30 to 60 seconds, sometimes a little bit less, maybe about 45 seconds. But when you're trying to cause mechanical stress, you're going to be doing, like I said, 75% of your 1 RM or higher. You're going to need a lot longer rest in between your sets. I would say anywhere from 2 to 5 minutes. That is going to be beneficial for you to be able to actually go into your 2nd set or even your 3rd set and be able to still hit that rep range of that 75% of your 1 RM. So don't try and rush into your sets. We don't want to be getting, you know, 75% of our 1 RM and going in, doing 1 set and hitting 5 repetitions, have 30 seconds rest and then try and do it again. It's not going to happen. You're going to not have enough time to recover and repair and get some oxygen and blood back into the muscles to be able to actually execute that 2nd set or the 3rd set. Give yourself a longer period of time, of course, if mechanical stress is what you're trying to focus on. And another thing that causes mechanical stress is force eccentric moves. So on the negative movements, we're going to want to be forcing some eccentric movement. So what I mean by this is, let's say for example you have a training partner with you, you're doing bench press. When you push up, as you're coming down, you're going to have a training partner that pushes on that bar. That is going to force a negative pull on you, and at the same time you're going to have to try and push and resist them. That is also causing mechanical stress. Now, mechanical stress leads to muscle damage. The reason why I wanted to bring this up is because muscle damage is what we get the day after. So when we wake up, we feel fatigued, or we have DOMs and things like that. That is muscle damage. A lot of people get that confused with lactic acid, which I'm going to be talking a little bit more in depth on the second mechanism of muscle growth, which is metabolic stress. But don't get confused with lactic acid and muscle damage. If you're feeling sore the next day or have DOMs 2-3 days after your training session, that is not anything to do with lactic acid or metabolic stress. That is all going to be muscle damage due to the mechanical stress that you put on your body from that workout. So now moving on to the second one, which is metabolic stress. Now, metabolic stress is probably more common. A lot of people know about metabolic stress, how it kind of works, but for you guys that don't fully understand what metabolic stress is, metabolic stress is when we're working in that hypertrophy rep range. So we're doing more volume. We want to be working around about 12 to 15 repetitions. Now, before we get into that, let's talk about actually what causes metabolic stress. What happens is when we go into our training sessions, do you ever notice that when you do that set, at the end of it, you get that burning sensation? You know, you feel your muscles inside, it feels like it's all burning, you want to shake and try and get some oxygen back in there. That is metabolic stress, because you've actually generated and caused the metabolite of lactic acid buildup. Now, what that does is, when you go into your training session, you're utilizing the glucose and the glycogen either from your pre-workout or from the food that you consumed the day before. The glucose and the glycogen, what that does is that gives us our fuel to able to actually move the weight and contract the muscles. Now, the end product of glucose and glycogen is lactic acid buildup. So once we deplete of the glycogen and the glucose within the muscle through doing the reps, we generate and cause lactic acid buildup. That is that pain and that sensation that we feel at the end of our working sets. That is the lactic acid. Now, lactic acid optimizing protein synthesis. Now, the problem is when we generate this lactic acid within the muscle, we now need to keep it there. So how do we keep the lactic acid in the muscles to try and optimize protein synthesis throughout our whole workout? This is where rest periods come in, and it's very important, especially if we're working for hypertrophy. Let's say, for example, you go into a training session, you pick up the dumbbells and you do, your first set for some bicep curls. You cause that burning sensation, you build up that lactic acid. Now what happens is you stop. Either your friend comes into the gym that you was out with them on the weekend, or you get a text on your phone and you start reading that text and then replying to it. What happens is you get distracted either from that phone call or that text, let's say, or from that person that's just come in the gym and you start chatting with them. Your rest goes from 30 seconds to a minute to like 5 minutes, sometimes even 10 minutes, because you get so distracted. Now what happens is in that first set that you've done, you've built up that lactic acid. Then if you go off and you chat or you get distracted by your phone, the lactic acid goes into the blood and then that gets pumped to the heart. The heart then uses up that lactic acid. So the lactic acid has gone. There's no more lactic acid. So when you go in to do your second set, you're practically starting from square one. You're having to start again and force that lactic acid to come back. So what we want to do is we want to try and optimize protein synthesis throughout our whole training session. We want to keep that lactic acid there in the muscle, and we want to keep it so it's bathing the actual muscle, because studies have shown that if you actually take muscle cells and put them in like a tube and then just pour lactic acid on it, that automatically optimizes protein synthesis. So we want to bathe our muscle cells in lactic acid. So what we need to do is focus on our rest period. So we do our first set, and we want to keep our rest period from anywhere from 30 seconds to 60 seconds. That is still going to keep that lactic acid within the muscle, but at the same time it's going to allow us to get some oxygen and blood back into the muscle, so we're able to go into our second set and still carry out those 12 to 15 repetitions. So if your friend comes in the gym, you say hello to him and you say, look, I can't talk, I'm training, I'll talk to you afterwards. Or if you've got a text, even though I advise that nobody should have their phone within the gym, unless it's an emergency, you leave your phone in your bag or in a locker or something like that, and you answer it later on. If you want to try and optimize some muscle growth and you want to make sure that you keep that protein synthesis going throughout your whole workout, you want to make sure that you keep your rest periods from 30 to 60 seconds. That is going to keep that lactic acid there. To sum it up, metabolic stress, what we want to be focusing on is a higher rep range of 12 to 15 repetitions. This can also include things like supersets, drop sets, giant sets, all these sorts of things where you're just increasing the volume. So you're doing sets after sets and you're keeping the rest period very minimal. So 30 to 60 seconds, no more than that. That's going to bathe the muscle still in lactic acid, and then when you go back into your next session, you're able to actually execute the whole rep range and still generate more lactic acid, which is going to, of course, optimize protein synthesis. So now the last one is muscle swelling. Muscle swelling and metabolic stress actually are kind of related, but you can separate them at the same time. So muscle swelling is the pump. So we all probably know the video and have seen the video that Arnold goes on about the pump and how satisfying the pump is. That is muscle swelling. When we do the metabolic stress training, we're putting that lactic acid within the muscle. Now when that lactic acid is built up into the muscle that we're training, the lactic acid pulls in fluids and water. Now when that pulls in that fluids and water, the cells within the muscle soak it and absorb up that water and fluids. That's what makes the cell swell up. So that's what causes that pump that we get. So the lactic acid is the burning sensation. The pump that we feel, that is muscle swelling. So it's exactly the same. We're doing that rep range of 12 to 15 repetitions. We can still include things like drop sets, supersets, giant sets, all that sort of stuff. And we want to minimize that rest period from anywhere from 30 to 60 seconds. And that's going to cause that lactic acid, which then pulls in that water, which swells up the muscles, cause that muscle swelling, which again optimizing protein synthesis, which equals bigger muscle growth. So those are like the 3 mechanisms of muscle growth. Like I said, 2 of them have been divided up, which you could say they're related and put them to one, but studies have shown that you can separate them at the same time. So it kind of gives you guys a little bit more of a better understanding on when we go into our training sessions, what should we be looking out for, you know, when it comes to our optimizing muscle growth and optimizing protein synthesis, whether we're being powerlifters, hypertrophy, CrossFit trainers, trying to increase our muscular endurance, cardiovascular endurance, whatever it is, we need to focus at the end result is we want to try and get muscle growth, because growth of the muscle is the main priority that we all focus on. Whatever our goals is, we want more developed, mature muscle mass, because it helps us with everything that we do with our activities, with our sports and day-to-day activities. So muscle growth is the main key priority that we all look for. And not just that, muscles are sexy themselves, you know. I say that, it sounds kind of cringy, but it is. We all love muscles. We love the way that it develops itself and it changes shapes and makes its structure, and it just looks good. Nobody wants fat, they want to have that muscle. So we need to make sure that we're looking at the mechanisms of muscle growth and how to implement that into our training routines in respective of our goals. So to make sure that they link up with what we're trying to achieve, whether it be in strength training, bodybuilding, CrossFit or whatever. Those are the 3 mechanisms that we need to be looking at: mechanical stress, metabolic stress and muscle swelling. So if this video helped you out and you guys got a better understanding, if anything made sense or if even anything didn't make sense to you, let me know by dropping a comment down below saying that this video did help you out or you didn't understand, it was too complicated, and I'll try and get back to you in a little bit more detail to help you out to get a better understanding. Also as well, don't forget, give this video a big thumbs up for me if you did enjoy it. If you are new around here, don't forget, click that subscribe button. Like I said, today was meant to be the mini cut episode 4. There was a change of plans. That video will be coming up for the next one. I'll see you guys, of course, on that next video. As always, make sure you get those gains, stay safe, and make it happen. Peace.
Chasing shadows, they're always